Well,
Good morning, Teresa.
Good morning.
I appreciate your time. Today, our objective is to get your feedback. I want to keep it short and sweet. I need to get some of the right names for approvers and stuff like that. But we're going to walk you through what the demo will look like, and we want to kind of stay at a high level, not too technical. We want to, show the business processes that we're going to automate for you for the POR. Okay.
Yeah, sounds great.
All right. So let me open up by saying the POR will reside in a doc cloud. We'll have a doc cloud where a document stays there, and will point to that document. Everybody can make any changes to the document, and it stays right there at all times. It doesn't have to be, that purchase requisition doesn't have to be, going email to email to email. So right now, just imagine it stays in one file in a doc cloud, and everything that pertains to it, it points to that, makes all the changes to it because it stays in one place. We know that Natasha is the creator of the POR process, correct?
Well, today, what she's doing is, because we're not automated, she'll get the paperwork from the real requester, right, with approval signatures on it, and then she puts it in the system. So she creates it in, I guess, what you call EB Suite or Business Suite or whatever that is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But today, but tomorrow she wouldn't be the only one unless we change that process. But just to let you know the difference, I guess.
Okay. All right. So the creator, the business user requests the POR. She puts the paperwork in and puts it into the system. And anything that takes place under $5,000 only requires one approver. Anything over 5,000 is two approvers. Am I right?
Oh, I don't recall that stuff. I don't know the exact details, unfortunately.
Okay. All right,
it sounds reasonable, and obviously, I'm sure you could help change that if we needed to. But obviously, there is something called a threshold, and then that would dictate the number of approvers. So I'm sure we could work around that.
Okay. So just for the demo purpose, we'll say approver 1. And then approver 2 would be Linda if it's over a threshold. And then if it goes over 250,000, Alice, approver 3, it has to go to him.
Sure.
We'll use that as the example.
Yep.
Okay, and then we're going to talk about how it routes once Natasha puts it in the system, and then we're going to show the automated processes of the workflow and the routing, and how you can do an audit and see where it's at in its proper place. And we'll be able to talk about the, all the business rules around it. We can talk about all of the thresholds. So any threshold you want and any way you want to route it, we'll customize that with a business rule engine. We're going to show some alerts and also an email or a text to your phone to show invoice number or POR number 123 waiting for your approval. We're going to be able to have that process built into the demo. And then reporting for it with full audit trails of where it's at, all the details, et cetera, that you can go to a window and see it all.
Okay, cool.
All right, so let's go ahead and get into that, Rob, and he'll just kind of walk through the demo for you so you'll be able to see it live, okay?
Okay, thanks.
Okay, should I just go through the demo? It'll only take about 10 minutes.
Okay.
Excuse me. So today I'm going to demonstrate a solution for managing purchase order requests. Oracle BPM is a natural fit for this. It's basically a workflow issue, and that's its specialty. Currently, the process is accomplished using spreadsheets, forms, email, and telephone calls. And this leads to processing errors and delays, which equals money. By modeling the purchase order request in BPM, we can mitigate all these issues and enhance the manual workflow so it works for you instead of you working for it. And this, we can adjust it to your actual purchasing needs. And this demo is actually based on notes from discussions that we had a few weeks ago and should be a complete automation of the system. So I'm going to quickly go through the workflow here. Essentially, so on the screen right now, we see the actual request, which will be followed by up to 3 levels of approval. Everyone will be notified when they have an approval waiting, some work item for them to attend to, and that's configurable if they want to be notified via email, SMS, voice, even instant messaging or Twitter if they would like that. You can even approve the items back via email. The 48-hour SLA is enforced with notifications when it's about to expire and escalations if there hasn't been any response. So deadlines are enforced and everything is fully audited so that the approval chain can be permanently stored. And if you ever have to investigate a purchase, all that information will be there. We'll also have various dashboard and aging reports so that someone can make sure, see how long things are taking. And eventually, once you've been through, once you have enough data, you can start actually drilling down. How long does a purchase order for Best Buy take? How long does an AT&T take? If you're going to different desks, which ones are more efficient? So let me dive into the actual workflow, which is, that's it. It's a workflow problem. It's not all that complex. So this is, I'm logged in right now as Natasha, who's actually entering the purchase order requisition, in this case, in the role of the business owner who's actually entering the requisition. So just some basic information here, and which I've essentially made up. And I'm also going to upload supporting documentation in the form of a procurement quote. So all these documents, as well as the requisition itself, are available to anyone on the system, and the documents will be stored in the doc cloud, available via email, etc. I think that's all we need here, so I'm just going to submit this.
Yeah, Rob, you just mentioned that once it's created and you attach the support document, the file, I guess, now exists, and anyone has access to it. I mean, when we say anyone, we mean anyone that's supposed to have access. Like, I'm sure there's security around all this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything can be locked down and secured as tightly as we want it to be.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. Okay.
And feel free to ask that on Monday in case I missed that point.
That's good. I'm making notes of her feedback right now.
Okay, great. Okay, so once Natasha has done her bit, so the way I have the process set up now is we route it to a purchasing clerk of unknown name, except in this case it's Rob, whose job it is to actually look at the request which has come from the business and add additional information as needed and actually start and make it into a kosher request. I'm assuming that takes place in some manner before it actually goes through the approval chain. So in this case, Rob logs in. Now Rob will also be alerted via email, as will everyone else. Where's my mail? So we can see I've received this email saying that there's an approval waiting for me, or a review in this case, and it alerted me that I should log in. So in this case, we can see the form that's been submitted. We can see the signatures which are starting to be accumulated. And in this case, we're going to reject it. We're going to say that there is not enough supporting documentation. And you're required to enter a comment for reject.
Now, Rob, before, when you clicked on that email, did you have to go through security then? Or because it knows you, just kind of log into the system, or you were already logged in?
When it's done via email, so again, security is as tight as we want to make it. When it's done via email, then it's a transaction from email to email, and you don't actually have to log into the system for that approval. So that's just being returned from the email address. If that's insufficient security, then either we'd have to do a custom way of locking down the email, which people shouldn't have access to the email. Or they would have to actually log into the workspace. The reason for the email approvals is for convenience. So someone just reviewing things, they don't need to actually log in.
No, perfect. And then when he or she was just viewing it, does that trigger something like an audit trail that I know that this person viewed it, even though they didn't take potentially any action? Like a person might open the email but then do nothing with it?
The email will not be audited. The screen, if you just take a look at it, it'll note that you were assigned the purchase order request. It won't care much beyond that.
I gotcha. Oh, no, that's good. I think.
Okay. Keep in mind, any requirement can actually be accommodated. So if you need that level of auditing, we can do that. It's not quite out of the box to do that, but anything can be done.
I gotcha. Okay, cool.
Okay. All right. So where was I? I was rejecting this. So I've entered a comment, and now it's rejected. And in the case of a rejection, it'll go back to the business owner. Now, you may have a more complicated rejection flow. We can discuss that in the future. So logging back in as Natasha, and one second.
We're going to consider Linda as the second approver.
That was Lydia, who's also a business owner, so it actually assigned it to her. I just have it set up to pick the first person at the moment. So it goes back to the business owner. The business owner will be able to see the comment and add additional files as necessary or provide additional data. So we're just going to add additional supporting documentation. How is this appearing on your screen? Can you see what I'm doing? Am I going too fast on the screen?
Oh, yeah, no, I see it. It's good.
Okay, good. Sometimes slow connections. So attach the additional documentation, make whatever changes may be necessary, and submit it again.
Okay, cool. Mm-hmm.
So this time, Rob will take a look at it. Review it, add additional information. Now, what I have on the screen now is the first page of your purchase order requisition, which is the information I had at the start. I know that there's a second page that's basically a working document. We can have that on the screen. I don't have it in there right now, but if it's just information that's being collected, it's the same as any other form information that we would want to get. So in this case, take a look at it, make sure. So now, if it passes this muster, then it's ready for the approval process. So I'm going to prove that at the clerk level. And I believe it goes to the cost center owner. I think we have that as Linda. So here's where we're not quite sure about who signs off at what level.
Yeah, I remember, in theory, what happens is anyone could request, put through a POR, right? And then they are required, before it even leaves their area, for their cost center owner to approve it. So right now, we're kind of, in your example, perhaps, because one of the questions is going to be, do we want that flow to change? Because remember, today, the paper is what's done. So I put through a POR and paper, it's printed. I go over to Alex's desk as my cost center owner. He signs it. I mean, obviously, he happens to also be the controller, but so he signs it. And then I walk the paper over to Natasha, who then enters it. So then the system now reflects that there is a purchase order requisition, recorded. Now, the thing is that in this demo, if we were, and again, you're giving Linda, and her team the option, would we push that out to the requester? So in the future, I log in and create the purchase order, and then it routes to Alex on my behalf, so I don't have to physically walk around and find him. And then he has to approve it, and then it goes to Natasha as the clerk, who needs to make sure that all the documents are in place before it becomes, kind of like an okay purchase order to then submit for, higher approvals. Like the cost center owner approves, my request because he's my boss, but there's approvals that go after that are more regarding the actual, the money or the contract that's behind it, that sort of thing. So I don't know the exact routing because that's why in some of our meetings there were, PORs that needed 3 signatures, some needed 5, and it's like it could get a little out of hand. And that's so the thresholds don't come in until after the cost center owner, meaning every POR is required to be signed by the cost center owner. And the thresholds may dictate whether it needs to also go to Linda, or maybe the category, anything related to a certain type of request goes to Linda. Again, these are questions that only she could really ensure that we get correct. But I know I haven't heard that type of stuff. So we would need to, I don't know if you want me to clarify that with her. I don't know if they have a purchase order matrix. It might be a little complex, because I know that many years ago, when they attempted to automate this, the hierarchy or the flow of the approvals is what killed the project.
Okay.
Okay.
So unfortunately, yeah.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think for Monday, what we'd be more concerned about is just getting a good representation of what the system is capable of doing, so that everyone understands that. We wouldn't actually model your entire process, but as long as your process can be described in some sort of logical fashion, that is, whatever Linda knows about the process, can we describe that? If we can describe that, we can implement it. Even if it's complicated, even if it has 5 levels of optional approvals with different thresholds for different companies, we can create a business rule system, or even something more complex if that's actually necessary to accommodate those rules.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, no, that's perfect. Yeah, that's the best.
And we'll preface. What we'll do is we'll preface that at the beginning. Say, Linda, I know we're going to take it through a process, and it's a little bit of a mock-up of what you do today, but it could change any way you'd like. But we just want to take you through the purpose of the capabilities.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing I know, and I don't know if this is coming up in your demo, will be when we do have purchase orders that have the supporting documentation being a contract, and how, remember that they don't want to get away from not printing that contract.
Yes. So we have to make sure that we have, X number of documents for supporting documents within this business process.
Right.
Yeah. Any rule like that this has to be printed out at this point, or we can have that as a step, or automatically send it to the printer. So we can support that sort of flow.
Oh, perfect. Okay, cool.
Yeah. What we'll say, Rob, is when you attach the POR, then you go back and you attach the contract with it. Let's just make those 2 documents part of the demo that we had, that we mentioned that we attached.
Okay.
And again, I know that you may have experienced this with other clients or not, but one of the things I remember Linda specifically saying is, let's say the executives at the company are required to, for whatever reason, have to approve this POR. It came to their desk, and she's like, I don't see one of them hitting print to print anything for themselves, right? And again, for whatever reason, they're busy. Is it something that other clients have done where perhaps their assistant, because all these executives have an assistant, gets the printed copy to them, but then obviously the executive still has to go in and approve it, so to speak. But you know what I'm saying? I'm just trying to, these are the executives that have to buy into this. So obviously, as much as we want to move them into the 21st century, so to speak, we need to still give them some flexibility, or at least have some way to respond to any of their unique requests,
Yeah, and we'll be as flexible as possible. And the other thing Linda said was, let's not try to do the entire thing. Let's do half of it and kind of walk before we run. So we can talk about how it could work, and then how you can change, approvers or however they want to see it. It's okay.
Oh, no, that makes sense. That's perfect. Yep. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So let's see, where were we? We were going to approve it at the cost center owner level. So again, I looked at the form and I just saw that as the first level, so that's just what I called it.
No, that's fine. Now, the little field you guys actually have for someone to fill in that's required for the purchase order requisition, did you get that from our samples, or is this kind of the out-of-our-box, everybody else starts with this? Can we customize any of those fields?
I got that from your form. So I took your form and I customized the first page.
All right, perfect. Again, that's not my area, but I don't really look at the POR in detail, so I'm glad you did. Okay. All right, that's good.
Okay. So at this point, it goes to the VP of Purchasing. Now, let's say that the VP of Purchasing wants to see who's actually signed off on this before. Let's see. Now, she can check the signature trail at the bottom, which is collecting the actual people who signed off, or we can actually go, and I'm showing you the back-end auditing process. You can track where the process has been and who actually signed off on everything. Just bring this up here. There it is. So this is the current create the purchase requisition. This information can be stored indefinitely or permanently, and we can see the steps that we've been through. So the VP of Purchasing wants to see where it's been and who's actually signed off on it. See which cost center owner actually signed off on this, which will actually be on this page as well. But this is a back end. So we can see that Alan signed off on it. That'll be Linda on. Well, I'm not sure who the cost center owner should be, but that'll be whoever it's appropriate to be on Monday. So we can see the full audit trail here. We can see everything that the process has done. We can also see if people are interested in that level, what the actual process. And this is the actual process that's being run. And it makes a reasonable amount of sense to see it's going between these different steps. You can see the path that it's taken. So you can see that it was rejected. Then it went back to purchasing. Now it's with the VP of Purchasing. This other thing over here is part of the SLA enforcement, and there we can see that now I'm seeing all of these because everything is going to my email. So we're sending out a custom alert. If basically we assign 20 hours for each user, 24 hours, and at 20 hours, it gives off an alert. That, of course, is entirely customizable according to what your business requires. We don't want to send out a lot of alerts if it's not necessary, but we want to make sure that things are processed within 48 or 72 hours so that you don't miss any deadlines.
All right. Now, is the manager, can that be delegated if I go on vacation?
Yes. So there's within the system a whole model of what a paper workflow would actually be like. So at this point, and any of these people who have been involved in the chain can perform a lot of paper-like workflow actions. In fact, they're better than paper because they're over the computer, so you can do more. So, for instance, if I want to request information on this purchase order request from someone, I want them to check it out, I want their opinion, I can do that, and the system will take care of that for me. It'll send them the request and return the information to me. I can reassign it to someone else if I think they are the ones who should approve it. I can also delegate it so someone else makes a decision, but it still shows up as my approval. I can create my own to-do list. Some people would like that. So let's say that there's several steps that have to be followed, and they're not in the main process, they're just my personal steps. I can create subtasks to actually track that to-do. If it belongs to someone else, or if the timing is expired, we can escalate it. The system has a complete, fairly complete org chart for the organization, or it can, so we can know who gets, when something needs to be escalated, the system will understand who it has to be escalated to. So we have all that ability to pass things around. It's just like passing paper around, but it's all driven by the computer, and nothing will get lost.
Oh, no, that's great. I like that. And actually, now that I'm looking at the purchase order requisition fields, I see you have the GL account number there.
Yeah. Now,
a lot of times the requester doesn't know what that is. And I don't know if this is still two things. One, is this designed so we could have some fields that are required and some that are not required, or it can't even get in? You know what I mean? And the GL, for example, in our current situation, would it be required because it's the clerk that puts it in?
Yeah, okay, so absolutely we can require or not require things at any particular stage. This is a very basic form. I haven't done any validations on this form.
Okay.
It's just a demo, so I didn't do that.
No,
We
that's
can
fine.
do we can do validations, we can do requirements, we can also do lookups. So
Yeah,
we
look,
can hook
let's get the
into,
drop down or something. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah, if there's only a set of cost centers, or if we store them in a database or a list, we can just have them pick the cost center from a drop-down list. And the same for any field, including the GL account. We can automatically assign the purchase order number. It's just for purposes of the demo. That's all being filled in right now. But any logic like that we can add.
Oh, excellent! I love it. All right.
Do we want to show that technical flow chart? Are you okay with that, or is that a little too much? The way he showed the flow. What do you think?
Oh, the one where you did the demo of the graphical view
Yeah, right there.
of what everything is. Oh no, I like that. I think that's cool. I will show it. I mean, it's only when you're going into your example of, hey, if I'm curious to know where who signed it and where the POR has been. Yeah, because I mean, you would take literally like 30 seconds to just walk them through that. We love visual stuff, so it's fine.
Okay. Yeah, this is the actual demonstration. This is the actual process here. It is a flow chart. It's readable it's reasonably easy to read. Everything, we're pointing to, you just have to understand we're making a decision here, and where you see the people, that means someone has to do something, and what role they have is on the left side. So, we can see the flow chart, and we can customize this as necessary. So this is essentially a basic approval process that goes through a number of levels and makes decisions at each point. Yeah,
and that's not Visio that you use for that, is it? I've never seen little people in my Visio examples. When I use MS Visio for my workflows.
So this goes a step further than Visio. So you can draw a lot of Visio diagrams and add whatever kind of detail that you want. This is the actual program, and it's in a system called BPMN, which is a standard, and the standard says you should have little people there.
Okay.
There's other, that's left to the. You can change that if you want, but yeah, that's just a way of differentiating between things that the system is doing and things that a person has to do.
Okay.
So at this point, after the VP of purchasing is about to sign off on it, here is where we would start using business rules to figure out if the purchase order needs to be routed for an executive approval or more than one. So if the total is over I believe it's 5,000 is the first level, then it requires Alex's signature. So that's a simple rule. We've made that we made it very simple here, but it could be as complex as we want it. So for instance, the threshold could be 40,000 for a certain company or a certain cost center. And if it exceeded the amount, we can route it to one or two approvals. So we can make that complex decision at every point, and whoever executive needs to approve it would be alerted in whatever manner was appropriate, or we can set that up to alert his delegate if it's his assistant or what have you.
I think they're going to still
So we can figure that out, put that all into the business rules, and handle the routing. We can handle a very complex routing if necessary, of however we need to model your business.
All right, perfect.
So,
all right, so we need to probably start wrapping it up with what other pieces you want to show, because we only had a half hour of our time.
Yeah, we're doing questions. The actual demo will take more than 10 or 15, and I am just about done. So at this point, it goes to what I'm calling the purchasing coordinator. I'm not sure who that is. That may be. I'm not sure if that's Natasha again. I just called her Lakshmi here. And her job is to enter the purchase order request into EBS. So at this point, we have, when she receives this, we have a fully authorized purchase order request, which has gotten all the appropriate signatures. And now, initially, you may want to just take this information and manually enter into EBS, and we can support that manual process. Eventually, and perhaps even in the short term, we'll want to automatically enter that purchase order request into EBS through EBS's back end. So we can submit, once it's fully approved, we can just have the computer automatically feed EBS. That's not a very difficult integration to do. So the process will make sure that everything's kosher, everyone's signed off on it, and then put it into the purchase order process. And that's the end of the POR process.
Gotcha. So as soon as she kind of approves it, like you said, says, okay, all the signatures are in, she hits a button or does something, then it should go automatically into EBS. That's what we would want, right? I don't see why anybody would do that.
I would imagine it. I just don't like to, I just don't want to push people into, again, if you're telling me that, that's great. I didn't want to make any assumptions.
Yeah. Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah, I agree. What we want to do is look at the interaction with EBS, and also we want to scan all the docs, and we can follow them into your file management system and content management as well. So, it all depends on what, process you want us to do, but we'll be able to scan, park the documents from the cloud into content and or your file system.
Yeah, so, I mean, again, it sounds like there's different systems here, because, I guess you call it the BPM, the workflow side, which is approvals and all that. So information is there, and then it's not in EBS until a certain point later when we want it to be in there.
Yes.
Right. EBS is next. The EBS is for POs.
Okay, and then you mentioned something about documents being scanned. So when you attach them on the BPM side for people to see or print in order for approval, again, it's over on this side, but it's not in EBS. So it's up to us if we want it in both places.
Yeah.
I gotcha. And it depends how they're going to use BPM, like which one is going to be your kind of repository for the most important pieces of information. But the thing with if you put it in EBS is that you can then link with the invoice. That's probably the most important part.
Okay.
Right? Like if it never hits EBS, the invoice won't be able to ever find it, right? Because eventually we want to link them together.
Yeah, you want to link it together, and then once she sees all the audit and she's approved it after all the different approvals, she'll release it to EBS, and then it creates that PO, and then you can put the docs anywhere you want.
I gotcha. Okay, cool.
So overall, we're looking at, the most important thing that we heard was process automation for the reduction of all the manual efforts, integration using, imaging, document cloud through the routing and workflow process of BPM, all custom business rules on how you want these approval levels to look and where you want it to go, email alerts on the timeliness of the process, and the overall capability to have full audit trail.
Yeah, and then the reporting, I think, is excellent, because honestly today we don't really have, I think, a good reporting system, whether it's how to analyze a particular workflow for a vendor. Why is it kind of taking longer than another? Oh, it's because we have this person in the flow that's slowing us down or whatever. Or you want to look at reporting in terms of, hey, how many purchase orders have I done for this vendor? That kind of stuff. It's, we don't really have really good visibility to that today.
Yeah, you'll have all of that, and that's all custom to how you want to see it. So,
yeah.
Now, are we hitting it? Are we getting through the meat of it, you think?
No, I definitely think so. Yeah. I know that in the BPM system, when you put up the purchase order, like, okay, I get the email, I have to review and approve something. Would it somewhere be in there accessible to me to see all the other purchase orders that have been put through or approved for that vendor?
Rob?
Yes, we can certainly do that. We can do that on the page. And if you wanted an email, it would be a little more complicated, but we could do that.
Okay, cool.
I'd rather her see. She can go into the BPM system window, and she can say, "Oh, here are PORs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can see them all and see where they're all at." She can take a little peek into it. That's what she wants to see.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Okay. All right. Well, if we get your approval here, we're gonna tweak it a little bit according to the feedback you gave us, and I just wanted to make sure you were good with it and so comfortable before we got there.
Gotcha. And then again, you're helping us with the purchase order stuff. Is the invoice payment something else? I mean,
There's a whole nother demo. There's a whole nother demo on imaging and invoice payment and stuff like that.